everyone. Welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Fazz.
And my name is Rich.
That was the same cadence. That was nice. Well,
anybody think it was deliberate?
Fazz and Rich in the morning.
What?
Oh, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I think we can have our own breakfast show.
No.
Oh,
No.
Do you not like mornings, or do you not like me, or do you not like breakfast, or radio,
I'm usually up early, so mornings are okay.
I do text you early, and you seem to reply early enough for me to not feel bad about that. So
I'm a misery guts. No one needs that in the morning.
No, I think everyone needs that in the morning.
Okay, all right. Let's road test this. Fazz and Rich in the morning. It's morning, and we're all going to die.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And then and now here's Katrina and the Waves. It works fine.
It's tonal whiplash.
Just like our podcast is most of the time, so it's fine. Yeah. So, speaking of whiplash, I believe that we are we're not battling, but we've kind of got a bit of a sort of fighty PSP, PS Vita podcast this week, I believe. I think, without asking you before the podcast, but definitely think that you're prepared for playing Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, and I have played The Warriors on the PSP. So I spoke for a long time last time. I will try not to do as much this time, but I do like this game, so I probably will talk for quite a while. But why don't you go first? I'll nudge you into the first position again, and I'll rest. Just rest.
Just rest.
Just
generally
and
rest.
Think about Katrina the Waves and a bacon sandwich.
Okay. Cool. You enjoy that.
See? Total radio vibes there from you. Cool.
That's cozy, isn't it? Right, Mortal Kombat on the Vita. So this is from about 2011, 2012 kind of neck of the woods.
Okay.
I played it a fair bit back in the day, but Mortal Kombat X was a game that I spent quite a long time with. And I know I've kind of touched upon various fighting game bits of my history before. Mortal Kombat X was kind of the first fighting game that I actually made a concerted effort to learn.
Okay.
And actually look up stuff about how to play it.
Okay. When's that from?
So that's a little bit later. Basically, I am going around the houses a little bit to set up me basically saying anything before that feels like a backward step.
Okay.
However, Mortal Kombat on the Vita, where it was the kind of the portable version of what would have been Mortal Kombat 9 when they kind of soft rebooted it. So Mortal Kombat X, immediate follow-up, felt a bit more comfortable in its own skin and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Mortal Kombat 9 was, where you start to get like X-ray moves and a lot of how you would see Mortal Kombat. I nearly said now, but they've rebooted it again. So, kind of not.
Is it Mortal Kombat 1 now? Is that the most recent one?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Which would be the 12th one.
I hate anything that does that. So, as most people would probably agree, I reckon, to go Xbox One, and then like that really annoyed me. Mortal Kombat 1 makes me not want to play it at all.
Yeah, I
why
kind of get that.
So pretentious. Just carry on with the numbers.
Well, it's not helped with Mortal Kombat rebooting itself so often.
Yeah,
because this is just called Mortal Kombat. The original Mortal Kombat was called.
Call Mortal Kombat Vita or Mortal? Do you know what I mean?
Something.
It annoys me because if you have to Google it and in research of a podcast, for example, and you type it in, it comes up with 3 hits. You're like, fuck off!
Yeah. So this is one of them. And
immediately annoyed.
Well, this will lighten the mood a bit. Then it might actually be one of my favourite fighting games on the Vita, if not one of my favourite games on the Vita.
Oh wow, cool.
It moves particularly well. I think the Mortal Kombat style kind of lends itself reasonably well to the Vita's controls and the kind of cramped button setup.
So can I ask what you mean by that? Because
I was about to tell you.
Thank you. This is such a radio show.
You bloody ask.
Sorry.
So, Mortal Kombat, you are much more likely to put in like square, square, triangle in kind of quick succession, or like backwards, forwards, circle, and stuff like that, rather than like quarter circle forward and all that kind of stuff, or like the SNK games where you do like quarter circle back, then half circle forward, then a face button.
Okay.
Those kind of complicated motion inputs doesn't really happen in Mortal Kombat. They can do if you want. You know, they'll have moves that are written as down, forward, square.
Yeah.
You can do it as a quarter circle. It'll work. But because of how cramped the Vita's face buttons and analog nubbins are, it's very easy for them to either not be input properly if they're big, elaborate motions, or you're accidentally hitting buttons and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the way Mortal Kombat works, it kind of feels like a reasonably good fit for the control scheme you have available to you.
Okay.
That said, me learning Mortal Kombat X a little bit more and going back to this does make me realise, actually, I just hate fighting games with a block button because I always forget to use it.
Yeah.
But up on the shoulder buttons, you've got your block, you've got your throws. So like it kind of hangs together quite well.
There though, isn't it? Like, yeah, I agree. Like, if you've got on the shoulder buttons, at least it feels like something you can just quickly access rather than. I don't know what it is about that sort of like having with the fighting game situation. Obviously, you're much more experienced than I am and stuff, but the layout of the buttons, whilst they seem quite universal, are very, very important to each of the different games. And,
really
you don't think about it until you start speaking about it out loud.
Yeah,
how much that matters.
But this is the kind of thing where, like, I know we've touched on it before with like first-person shooters. You know, back in the day, I remember my parents watching me play some of them and go, "Oh, but they're all the same, aren't they? You're just going down a corridor shooting things." And then you're like, "No, Mum," and you're trying to rattle off all of the nuances. When you start to learn fighting games like I did with Mortal Kombat X, and you start to appreciate, well, actually, I don't like having a separate block button. It comes more naturally to me to have it tied to my movement, so I'm moving away from the enemy to block. That feels more natural to me. You only start to appreciate those kind of things when you really start to drill into how they work. And yeah, it absolutely makes a difference. So besides the kind of the button setup, you can use X-ray attacks and fatalities and stuff like that using the touchscreen. So the fatalities, you actually have to do the swiping of the directions like you would on the control pad. But the X-ray attacks, you can just press the big old button. And do it.
I imagine someone just working in a hospital just by, X-ray button.
Yeah, probably just with less crunching of bones afterwards, I guess. But you still have button combinations you can press if you choose to. It's just that for some weird reason I kind of had a bit more difficulty getting them to register.
All right,
because you have to press a couple at the same time and all that kind of stuff. And I thought I was, but the console didn't. Yeah. So I'm not really sure what was going on there. And as best I can tell, like most of the kind of quote unquote full fat version of the game that would have been on the PS3 or the Xbox 360 or whatever, most of it's made the jump. Content wise, so you've got your bonus content, you've got your extra like modifiers you can unlock, costumes you can unlock. The roster's pretty good. You can play as Kratos in this. That's kind of fun. Freddy Krueger's in there, so this was the start of the kind of guest character stuff that Mortal Kombat does.
Yeah.
They're all in there. So there's a bunch of the DLC characters from the big console versions are in here.
Was Kratos in another one? I feel like he was in another fighting game front. Was it Soul Calibur?
It might have been. Can't remember off the top of my head.
I can't remember. It's just like, just rings a bell that he was in.
Well, I know Geralt was in Soul Calibur.
Yeah, it's just sort of like, it's just interesting that, I mean, because it obviously makes sense for him he lends himself very much to a fighting arena sort of character, doesn't he? So, yeah.
You got your challenge towers, like you always traditionally did in Mortal Kombat. You also have a bonus challenge tower in this, which is like Vita centric.
Okay.
So you will have things where, say, you have to defeat an enemy while occasionally tapping the screen to blow up their missiles in flight. which you wouldn't normally do in Mortal Kombat, but it's just as a little bonus minigame you can. There's basically a riff on Fruit Ninja, if you remember that from your phone. But you're slicing like heads and hearts and stuff like that.
From your phone, from the late noughties.
Shaking your Vita to blow up bombs and stuff like that.
Okay, how did you find that? Because you usually hate that kind of shit about the Vita.
Yeah, I hated it.
Yeah,
like it's utterly pointless.
Got it.
For this reason. Because like it's kind of nice that it's there. It's kind of good that they thought about putting it in. However, when you get into the story, which is present, and the game itself, the characters are like, obviously they're going to be downgraded from the kind of big console versions, right? It's a noticeable jump. You know, you watch a story cutscene and then it goes to the fight, and it's a seamless transition. Like, it loads behind the video, but it is very noticeable when it's in game mode. You know, it's not like a subtle transition. Like, all of the skin textures kind of look like uncooked pork belly. Like, everybody they have that kind of like flayed, pallid, kind of pale kind of look.
That's really made my stomach turn.
Yeah, that's because it's stomach turning. Like, it's not nice. It's not nice to look at. And that's before you get to the fatalities.
I don't think I've ever heard a game be reviewed such as
they look like uncooked pork.
I'm just going to make a note of that in my notes. Genuinely writing down, using your cartridge pen, fountain pen.
That's fine.
I'm just going to put uncooked pork belly. Yeah.
So I kind of wish they hadn't bothered with the bonus challenge tower for the Vita-centric stuff in favour of maybe polishing the textures a little bit. But that said, like, it looks good. You know, it's a decent looking game. And the main thing, the crucial bit, is that it does move well. Yeah. Which, as a fighting game, you know, is kind of the be-all and end-all. So, yeah, like, it does the job perfectly well. All that said, I would be surprised if there was a single human being upon this earth in 2024 that would go, you know what, that is my favourite way of playing Mortal Kombat, and that is the most accessible way to me of playing Mortal Kombat nowadays. I really, really do not think that is the case.
No.
So it's kind of its time, in the respect of, you know, you are very unlikely to go out of your way to go and play it. But if you happen to be in that position and you happen to be in the market for a fighting game on your Vita, then yeah, go for it. It's a good one.
Cool. Score?
I mean, we seem to give everything an 8 out of 10, but I was leaning towards 8 out of 10.
If it's natural, don't worry about it.
Yeah, but that's the problem, isn't it? Like, it's
just
sort of, it's a bit.
Well,
bit
okay
brainless,
then.
isn't it?
Okay, well then let me say that I think it feels like less. Even though you came in saying it was one of your favourite games on the Vita potentially,
Yeah.
I still feel like more like a 7 than. I mean, that, you know, that's.
So why is that then?
I think that. Even though it has all of the hallmarks of being a good fighting game, you still found a way of telling me that it feels quite... Even when you said the controls are okay, it felt quite simplified, that it had to be simplified on the Vita, if that makes sense. Like, it almost, do you feel like it lost
graphically
something?
No,
okay.
like, only graphically. I think the gameplay and I think the controls are all still there.
Yeah.
It feels to me more like Mortal Kombat on the PS Vita walked so that portable versions of Mortal Kombat nowadays could run.
Okay.
And I kind of mean run full stop, because I've heard that it's not fantastic on Switch.
Yeah,
but, like,
can they run?
but the point is that it kind of set out that framework that there is a way of doing it. I think.
So does that not speak for it being a better game then? Because obviously you're saying that it might not be the play.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Because what I was about to say was, you've got things like Blaze Blue and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom and stuff like that, and I've not drilled into those more recently. Blaze Blue in particular, I frigging loved on the Vita, and I can't help but think that actually, in the cold light of day, looking back at it nowadays, I think they would probably be able to pip it to the post for actually better games, but I've not looked at them.
Mention of Marvel vs. Capcom. Have you got the new version? That's not new, but they've brought out the collection on it for the Switch.
Yes,
week, I think.
yes, they have.
Are you buying it?
I've already bought it twice.
Okay, right, fair enough.
Well, in theory, I've bought it twice. Like, I've got it on my Steam Deck, but I had
such disdain that you said that with you.
Well, the reason I've got the disdain for it is because I fucking pre-ordered it from Game, who have fucked the pre-orders like nobody's business. So I don't know if that copy exists for me, and I'm waiting for customer service to get back to my fucking emails.
That's fair. Yeah.
So in theory, yeah, I bought it twice, and I'm not happy about it.
Okay, I'm really sorry. I genuinely didn't know how much that would upset Rich.
It's not hard, is it? It's not hard. Like, people are throwing 50 quid at you for a product that you are offering. Provide that product rather than erasing all of your pre-orders at some point in August because you switched systems. That's your problem, Fraser Group. You should have thought of that before you started pressing buttons.
Yeah. Yeah. Nath, who came in the podcast for Tekken, actually, ironically, all the way back in like the episode 7, used to work for Game and now chooses not to. So
I think that is fair.
So that's all you need to say about that, really. But yeah, it's really annoying. Like you say, it's so. This is why it's so difficult to buy physical media new nowadays, because it's so hard. It's just so. Why do they make it so difficult for you to just have something in your hands that is in so? And I mean, this is probably a good time to talk about it now. Really, I've just. Go on, sorry.
Well, I was just about to say, for anybody in America who is listening,
oh yeah,
Game is basically was the last kind of main high street game shop for where you would get new games. CEX that we've mentioned previously, you would get second-hand stuff, by and large. If I were running CEX, by the way, I'd be looking at offering new stuff a lot more.
Yeah.
But Game basically got bought out by a bigger company, and everything, by many accounts since then, has just gone down the toilet.
So, even better link now then, because you mentioned them. So, CEX, so I have just recently, as of, yesterday, but when the podcast come out last week, got second-hand a Logitech G Cloud handheld, which I wanted to mention just because, and I think I'll go into way more detail because I've only really had a day sort of dabble with it and look at it, but certainly, because it came second-hand, but it's in brilliant condition. And for what I paid for it, I'm very chuffed, because actually it's about £100, if not £120 underneath the best, newest price in Black Friday sales that's out there. And so I was really chuffed with the way it came, because I know there is a CEX lottery, for example, that people kind of undergo, and I was a bit worried about getting hardware from that, but it seems to have come, and it seems to be exactly what I want it to be.
Nice.
And sort of, and secondly, talking about having a handheld that feels right when we talk about the Vita and sort of, and the hand cramping and things, and whether it's the right way of playing something down stuff. So having something bigger now in my hands and in my household, I'll be interested to see how that handles and feels as a 2024 handheld gaming device. So yeah, more to come on that, but certainly, I can see, I don't understand. I mean, CEX is not famous for its customer service or how it feels when you go into a shop necessarily. We just discussed that all the way back on podcast number 3. But at the same time, I don't think I've ever been let down by them. Certainly from a product point of view, or actually really a customer service point of view. I usually get my stuff on time. It's usually good quality. They give you a warranty. Like, whether or not the shops smell like sweat and piss, I still go in them, and they are relatively clean, and they usually have something I want. So, to say that they managed to do that, then, but other people who had a reputation as retailers in the high street of games and DVDs and stuff, everyone else has gone by the wayside, and it's just fucking annoying that you can't really find any other option apart from CEX, but at least they do offer an option of, so there's no new option anywhere. There's no.
Well, there's nothing on the high street.
No,
like online is fair enough.
But then it becomes that sort of reduced pool, and therefore they can drive the prices up, and there's no other option. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, so it becomes this thing where it's actually right. Well, I have to pay for Amazon because that's all there is. I mean, there are other options out there, but Smith's Toy Shop is the next option that I know of that sell new games. You know what I mean? And they do a good enough job, but their prices are just kind of bog standard. You get like one sort of like weekly deal, but it's usually on like Bluey on the Switch. It's never like on anything that you really actually want.
But I mean, it's baffling to me that somebody would buy this company, this well-known retailer, and then actively go out of their way to alienate that kind of like core customer base.
And asset strip it. Yeah, okay.
I don't know, basically, if I have bought this game twice, but the version I picked up on Steam with my Steam Deck, I've thoroughly enjoyed. Okay. Thank you for asking.
Okay.
But to go full circle, it's that kind of thing that makes me think that like there is kind of a place for Mortal Kombat on the Vita, because you go back a step and you've got, I don't know, Tekken on the Game Boy Advance, or the Street Fighters that were on there and stuff like that, and they are severely hobbled. They are very cut back, and don't quite feel right. Whereas this, to my mind, is one of the first times where you have a portable version of a console game that feels more or less complete.
Okay.
And plays right.
Then just then leave it where it is. Leave it in an 8 then.
I've already put it as a 7.
Oh, okay. Right. But then it might win the 7 out of 10 category when we do it because it's so good.
But that's your fault then.
Yeah. Lots of things are my fault. So,
But it is one of those things that, like I say, I think it's got its place. And it does do a very, very good job. But it's still a fighting game on the Vita, and it is like graphically compromised. It works, plays well. You're going to get hand cramp playing it. There are better ways to be playing Mortal Kombat in 2024.
When will I release you from your Vita duties from the hand cramp situation?
To be honest,
how many years do you think it will be?
I am so done. I am so done.
We will talk about this offline, but at the same time, though, I find it quite fun.
Yeah, which is fair enough.
But then I don't want to hurt my friend. But at the same time, it's quite funny seeing how angry you get from the crippling sensation of playing on the PS Vita in 2024.
It's just not designed for adult human hands.
Do you think you were once like a smaller, like human, like at the time? Do you think
like not much, but yeah, I think like it's not more designed for. People with smaller hands. I've got quite long fingers and all that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't necessarily say it was designed for teenagers necessarily, but like it, going back to it now and comparing it to, say, the Switch, like sure, the Switch has small buttons and small analog sticks and all that kind of stuff, but there's just a little bit more real estate to it. Like everything's a little bit more spread out.
I think that's why also when I was mentioning the Logitech G Cloud, I was thinking from a point of view that almost that will do everyone. There's a massive fan base out there for the Vita because of like, oh, this thing's a powerhouse and it's absolutely incredible what it can do for our handheld. I just think there's definitely been a point now where actually when you look at Steam Decks, you look at Rogue Allies, Rogue Ally? Oh, okay. Anyway, one of those ones.
I've never heard it said out loud.
No, they're really cheap at the moment. I said really cheap. I think there's £200 off a Rogue Ally,
whatever it's called,
Rogue Squadron, Rogue One. One of those at the moment. So if you're in the market for a handheld, that seems to be the one that's actually on offer at the moment. And then Steam Decks, and it just feels like we've moved to that next generation, which I know that people kind of moved off it anyway, but I see a massive crowd of people out there going, oh, the Vita's amazing and stuff, and I'm sure it is, when but at the same time, I hear regularly from yourself that it just causes quite a lot of sort of pain would be the easiest way of putting it.
It would be a different story for me if I ever picked up one of those things that you could slot it into that gave it a bit of a grip, so you could kind of wrap your hands around it a little bit more. But you can, but they're kind of weirdly expensive now.
Yeah, so annoying.
Yeah, exactly. But
give me the free grips.
If I'd have got one back in the day, or 3D printed one for myself or whatever, different story. But yeah, nowadays, like even the Switch and the kind of default Joy-Cons and stuff like that, I've got a different thing to slot it into that gives me the kind of grips around the side, kind of like Steam Deck, that just has that little bit more real estate.
Cool. Okay, so let's talk about the PSP then. And because I played this game when I was away. I mentioned it actually. I was in Blackpool the other week. So, and really appreciated having a PSP in my hands. That is, you do get the old. It's obviously older technology than the Vita, and it feels a little bit clunky now, maybe, but it still feels like. I mean, I played it several times over the weekend, probably for about 8 hours or something like that, and on a night time, and I never really kind of got that horrendous hand cramp from like that.
8 hours.
Yeah,
bloody hell!
Just like as in probably 9 p.m. till midnight.
You find the time. Wow.
It's just like on a night time. Just don't sleep. Don't sleep. That's my advice for everybody out there. Who bothers with sleep anymore? Do you not find it as an adult? I've definitely rolled into a 6.5 hours time. It's sleepy time. Sleepy time.
Maybe not quite that short.
But
I don't sleep in.
No. Yeah, I'm there or thereabouts. So I'm just I'm already an old person. I'm already I'll be I'm up walking my imaginary dog and doing a paper round at 4:30 in the morning. So anyway, but that's what I was doing, and the PSP, and I was a bit so for example, I knew that I could play this on my Vita, and I think the form factor of the PSP is where I'm a bit actually, this feels a bit more at home, really. So
a little bit chunkier.
Yeah. It just a bit wider and a bit more, a bit more girth.
More real estate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I played The Warriors. So 2005, it came out on the PlayStation 2 and Xbox. This was a 2007 PSP port. So it was developed by Rockstar Toronto, but of fame for us, it was ported to the PSP by Rockstar Leeds.
Oh, hey!
So literally 2 miles from our house in Pudsey houses, it was ported there. So there you go, which is really cool. And they did a couple. I think they might have done all the Grand Theft Autos maybe from. I guess they might have done the ones on the PSP. I think. Rockstar Leeds and sort of Rockstar North, and kind of they've always been mixed in with the sort of the ports around the PSP at that time and the DS and things with Chinatown Wars. So the Warriors then. Have you played the Warriors? Did you know of it? Did you see the movie? Or
I have seen the movie. I have briefly played the game. What have I played it on? That's going to confuse me. I don't think I played it on the PSP. Maybe? Yeah, it's something like that, I think. Yeah.
So movie. 1979 movie by Walter Hill. I personally, I don't know how you feel about it, but I personally would recommend anybody to go watch that movie, especially if you can get it, the director's cut on Blu-ray, for example. I think that was the first Blu-ray I ever owned, actually. I was just really into, when I got my PS3, really into the Warriors then, and I saw it come out on Blu-ray, and I was like, oh man, this is and then the game game had come out as well. So yeah, love the Warriors movie. It's the perfect length of time to spend in a movie. It's an hour and 40 maximum, the director's cut, I think it is. And they do these really cool kind of cuts during it where they've kind of put these comic book frames between frames and really kind of made it sing by cutting them together and stuff. And it just has that, I don't know what it is, just so evocative for the 1979, late 1970s New York City slum grime feel, and it feels like you're watching the very first sort of 2 hours of Final Fantasy VII, almost in actual real life. Just these burly dudes knocking about with the leather vests on, and I genuinely can imagine one day where I own a Warrior vest, just so not for wearing outside per se, but just for having somewhere in the house, just
just to wear it when you're doing the washing up or whatever.
Yeah, just I don't want to sort of it's easy to kind of say things on a podcast and not take them back and stuff. I'm not going to say it's one of my favourite movies of all time, but it's definitely a movie that I think about a lot and feel a lot about. And it means a lot to me. So to know then that there was a game coming out as well, I was extremely excited about it. It's one of Rockstar's only non-original games, which I've never really thought about until now. Which it shows how strong that source material is, because I can't imagine that Rockstar would go, we're going to go and do something with material that's shit. but also it speaks to how much that the movie leaves on the table as well. Like, it's a very short movie that is very clear in its sort of storyline, and it's all propelled by that sort of chase sort of situation. One night, 20 miles, the warriors have got to get across town and not get killed by rival gangs who have all been set upon them. You know, there's been effectively a bounty put out on them, and this small sort of upstart gang from, you know, Coney Island have got to get back from this massive gang meeting where Cyrus has been, who is the main leader of the main gang in town. He's suggested that everybody should come together and try and make a truce, and all the gangs should take over New York. And one gang, the Rogues, they basically, their leader, the Rogues, decides that he's just a bit of a dickhead and he's just going to actually murder Cyrus in cold blood, frame the warriors for it, and then the warriors are in the shit and they've got to make it across town. I think it's like 20 miles in one night. And such a simple premise, and works brilliantly for the movie. And I wouldn't want an extra wide sort of that more story in the movie. I just think it just runs and hums so quickly. But I was also super excited to see that you can tell more of a story around that sort of situation as well. So it's just interesting that Rockstar have done that. Like, and
it's a Grand Theft Auto story, isn't it?
Effectively, yeah. You're right. Yeah, and they've just kind of thought, well, actually, this is the perfect.
It would fit in perfectly as a sort of storyline set of missions in Grand Theft Auto. So yeah,
and there's one.
I think it tracks.
Yeah, you're right. And there's a chap in, you know, one of the warriors called Axel, and he's clearly like a wrong'un, but he's like, you know, like he almost looks like and you know, all the actors, you know, you don't really know them from Adam necessarily nowadays, and he looks like Ashton Kutcher would have looked like in a 1970s sort of thing, with a bit more stubble, and it's like ironically from the 70s show, and you know, but he's like, he clearly, like, he gets like done for, like arrested, I think, in the end by, I think it's a female cop, I think it is, when he's like trying to like pretty much assault her on like a bench. And it's just like, you know, like these things where like it picks up these characters and you don't know anything about them necessarily, and you only learn a little snippet about each of them, but you care about them all, like, as in weirdly, like over this sort of period of time. But I just think that the game does certainly, I've played this all the way through in the PlayStation 2 and played it all the way through in the PSP now, and it just does a great job of fleshing out that story, but without outstaying its welcome or treading on the source material, which is such a hard job to do. I'm so impressed by this game, by the fact that they've done that, really. You know, even the things like in the opening credits, for example, the opening credits just ape the movie's opening credits, but it is PlayStation 2 and then PlayStation Portable graphics, but the characters look just like their characters. That is in, you know, for what the graphics offer you in 2005, 2007 era. Like, is in, but they look amazing, and it's just got the fantastic soundtrack behind it as well, where you've kind of got a few sort of licensed songs and stuff like Nowhere to Run, but then you also get like the music that hangs around, the sort of haunting, almost horror music that hangs around at the start of the movie and also the start of the game, where the Coney Island wheel's spinning around, and it just kind of has that sort of like kind of like an undertone of sort of just almost like you just think, oh, something bad's about to happen here, and then it kicks into sort of a bit of an action sort of, you know, late 70s, early 80s, like bow, 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 now, and then they're just showing you all the exposition of the movie and the game over the opening credits, and you think, all right, okay, well, when you first get into this game, you think, oh, is it just going to be you know, like for like of the movie? No, we're going to send you back 3 months earlier to kind of see how the warriors maybe got themselves into the situation they got themselves into. How did they become this up and coming gang in the city over a short period of time? You know, and they really take the time to kind of go, right, well, the warriors aren't just about Swan, who's the lieutenant, which basically kind of the film mostly follows him, really, as the kind of lead character. But it's about Cleon, who is the war chief who gets killed in the first sort of like 10 minutes of the movie. And, yeah, sorry, spoiler. But it's just like, you know, that he's so inconsequential in the movie. He really is. Like, he's nobody, like, effectively. But in this game, he becomes a character for, you know, about 10 missions. You kind of get to, you know, learn and sort of grow with Cleon. So it does a really good job of being able to say, right, I can give some more flesh and bone to these characters. In terms of the actual mechanics of the game and how it works, so it's sort of a semi-open world beat 'em up. It's a bit like Streets of Rage, but kind of in a 3D 3D land. But I forgot how much sense of adventure there is in this game. Like, I remember it just being a bit of a brawler, sort of beat 'em up. I forgot how many little mini games that they've inserted into this to make it so much more substantial. So you can sort of perform. You pick up a graffiti artist pretty much early in the game, and he's kind of like a main character for a few missions and stuff, Rembrandt. And so you actually perform graffiti with your joystick, and you have to follow a line that sort of follows a wobbly W, and he'll spray graffiti onto a wall, and you can run out of paint if you don't actually follow the line. And that becomes, well, actually, I think it's like episode 6 or 7 or 8 or something, where you go to a graffiti showdown and you've got 3 gangs around you. You can control the warriors that you're in the small gang with at the time to say, watch my back, or create some havoc, or go and beat those guys up. And then you'll be drawing your graffiti on the wall, and you have to follow the line. So it's like a little mini game, and you run out of paint if you don't do it very well. You've got to pick up more paint, which means you've got to go and brawl with people to stop them from getting paint. And there's a real sense of, not jeopardy per se, but there's a difficulty level to it. Like, you've kind of got to do this mini game under pressure, whilst you're also going, oh, that guy's going to get that kind of paint before me, and therefore their gang's going to get to the end of their sort of, their tag they're lying down. All these little things that just feed into, the stealth missions. If you get tackled by a cop while you're rioting, you've got to escape the handcuffs. So it's just a gentle sort of like L button, R button situation where you've got to tap in time to get out of the handcuffs. You might have to cause havoc and mayhem and destroy some cars and steal some car radios, and even those are like, you've got to spin the joystick to get the car radio, to steal the car radio. I can see the glint in your eye where you're thinking, I can't remember that.
It's just Chinatown Wars.
It's the same thing. So if you think that this came before that, but on a different console,
but you can see like even more of a through thread with Grand Theft Auto.
And this is the thing, and this is the kind of point I'm getting to. Really, it really is Rockstar playing the hits. State of Emergency, which I've spoke about on the podcast previously, where they kind of get that rioting and that semi-open world within a contained area where you can kind of go around and sort of, effectively you're inciting a riot and destroying things. They do that in this. You've talked about Grand Theft Auto and how much it apes on that. Manhunt. So there are stealth parts to the missions as well, where you have to hide in the shadows, and then you would throw a brick maybe across the way to distract an enemy, and then you dart to the next shadow. Like all those kind of things. Bully. That is they've got, and as you just said about Chinatown Wars as well, they've got every little bit of games from around that area, probably from like 2000 to like, say 2010, where it all congeals in this game to give you, I wouldn't say perfect, but certainly little snippets of each of them, where you kind of go, oh, I remember that mechanic from here, and I remember this from here, and this is really cool.
The Rockstar pick and mix collection.
Yeah, it really is. That's exactly what it is. So you I don't know, like I don't want to say it detracts from it necessarily, but you probably get a lot of that, and even though there's so much variety in it, within one specific mission, it might be like, right, okay, go and tag 10 walls, and then you kind of get a bit like, right, I'm tagging the same thing, I've got to go buy more paint from this person on the street, and then I've got to do it again, and it does get a bit repetitive in mission, and it feels like, and that's the only time where you kind of feel, the strain of, have they strung this out a little bit too much? Maybe it didn't need to be, I can't remember, it's something like 20 missions, I think it is, whereas it could have maybe have been sort of, could this have been like, I don't know how, like a PS3, PSP mini, or maybe it's too much for that. Do you know when you just think it's a bit of a halfway house where actually it feels like the DLC for the movie, and it probably didn't need to be a full-fledged experience, and they probably stretched out a few missions a bit too much. It's like, oh, you've got to go riot, and then you brawl with people for a long time, and it's like, oh, you've got to go and knock out these guys now, and it's just like, right, okay, I feel like I'm kind of doing the same, even though there's loads of variety, I'm still kind of doing the same thing a little bit. And it's, you get a sense that this game is perfectly ported to the PSP from the PS2 version. I I've never seen a game run so well so early in the PSP's life cycle. Like, you can tell Rockstar have done it, and then they've gone and they've said, right, this team in Rockstar leads. You need to take care of this. That is, and then put a whole team on it. It's not just like when I talk about Crazy Taxi, for example, not just a random company somewhere that's just porting a game from Dreamcast to PSP, and you're like, you've done nothing with it. Like, you can tell that it sounds silly, they've done nothing with it, but they've done such a good job of doing nothing with it that you feel like you're just playing. You know, when everyone says on the PSP, it's like playing on a PS2 game or whatever. Or, you know, this is the game that I'm like, right, okay, there is no difference between how good this is on the PSP as it was on the PS2. I have, you know, I would have no qualms sort of saying which is the best way of playing it. Well, if you want to play handheld, like, as in, you know, it sounds great, looks great, feels great. You don't lose any of the experience from it. You kind of get the same things where the same as you always do with any Rockstar game. You get bonus missions. You do get a Streets of Rage side brawling, beat 'em up game called Armies of the Night, which you access via an arcade machine in the Coney Island base. It's just so clever. You get when you're in your Coney Island sort of warehouse and you're between missions. Again, it's a PSP game, and you kind of just expect it to be all pared back. No, you can roam around your safe house. You can pick up the Armies of the Night game. You can pick up the bonus missions. You can go outside and you can go and pick up extra missions, like side missions. You get missions where it shows you how the Warriors were formed. You know, how did Swan and Ajax join the Warriors and stuff. You can do little bits like, you do push-ups and pull-ups just to get better stats for brawling and stuff, as you do in any sort of Rockstar GTA game, for example, from Vice City onwards. It just works so well. It's just Rockstar doing Rockstar things, doing it really, really well. Apart from that little bit of pacing in the missions where you kind of think, I'm a bit repetitive here and a little bit repetitive there. I remember one of the missions where I played in the caravan was where, in fact, it's the graffiti mission again. It's so you do the graffiti sort of showdown at the start, and then it turns into you've got to escape a brawl. So then you go up a lift, and then you're running across rooftops. It's sort of a weird isometric sort of, I guess, camera angle, really. And you think the game might fall down trying to get all that into one mission. So many different types of ways of doing that mission, and then you're running across these rooftops. You think the performance would drop, or you think that your character might not jump these gaps as quick as you can, and you've got this gang on your back who's going to beat you up and things. And I know so many games where that would just fall down and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work at pace. And where you're like, you've got to tap square at the exact right time to jump across these rooftops. Everything works. Just everything works, and it looks great. And you can't ask for more, especially when they've done such a good job of taking some great source material and making it into that little bit more of a fleshed out experience. It might sound like I'm like, super effusive about this game. Don't get me wrong, I know that there are some drawbacks with, like, say, the repetition and stuff, but they do such an amazing job of making a fully fledged PSP game look so good, sound so good, feel so good. And I am going to be as objective about this as possible, because for me to be subjective, because I love the Warriors so much and the lore of the Warriors and the movie and things, that I would have thought that actually I would have been really super high on this. But it's an 8 out of 10 for me, but a really good recommendation as an 8 out of 10. Pile up that 8 out of 10 bracket, get it in there. That's exactly where it needs to be. And I can see it sort of being there near the dead end and sort of fighting some games off in 8 out of 10, because it is that good. But yeah, it is some of the best hours that I've spent with a video game on the PSP. That's probably the best praise I can give it, really. It's not perfect, but certainly, yeah, I really enjoyed my time going back to it again after playing it through, in the mid-2000s. So
nice.
Yeah. Sorry, I really waxed lyrical about that, but it felt good to kind of get. It feels like I've been trying to review the Warriors since 2005 somewhere on some sort of platform, and here it is, 19 years later, just pouring out of me. So, really, really enjoyed kind of having a bit of a chat about sort of, again, they just seem to be seeping in, but these conversations about what handheld gaming means and how accessible it is in 2024. You know, we do these to kind of have a look back and stuff, but at the same time, I think that it's nice to have these consoles in our lives, the PSP and PS Vita, and you know, and I've just shown there that actually in 2024 I still had an amazing experience on my PSP. You know, it's still viable and possible. It's just about finding the right game, I think, and having the, and also it really helped that I was kind of like in a caravan, didn't have any internet and stuff, and I was like, oh, what's the one thing I've got to focus on? The Warriors on my PSP. You kind of have that just sort of experience where it's like it felt like the right time to have a portable PlayStation in my hands, regardless of it being 20 years old. So including the game as well. Yeah, that's it from me this week. You got any more to add?
No, just bugging me that I can't work out where I've played the Warriors. I have a feeling it was reasonably recently as well. I don't know if I've got like a PS2 version on my PS4 or something like that. Maybe you know. I was just having a look through my my list, and I couldn't spot it anywhere. So I haven't got like a physical copy of it.
I mean, someone will have done it somewhere, probably in the world and stuff. But it'd be a great game to have in an arcade cabinet, like it's just sort of like like an evolution of sort of the beat 'em up Streets of Rage situation where you could just have it on an arcade.
Well, it does feel like the kind of thing that they could have done if they were going to try and do like a 3D Streets of Rage back when. You know, the kind of template they could have used and didn't.
Yeah. Speaking of radio shows that we did at the start of the podcast, that is one of the best things about the Warriors is the voiceover sort of use of a radio to kind of effectively send out the sort of adverts that, you know, of the fights and
the
stuff.
Classic trope.
Yeah, so clever. It's just sort of like, you know, like, hey there, boppers. That isn't, you know, like the Warriors got smacked down tonight or whatever. And you're like, it's just so cool. Like, it just drips with it, you know, that sort of that edge around. Like, I just, you know, when people are like, oh, I want to live in this era, I want to live in this era and stuff. I love living how I live right now. You know what I mean? I get to play the Warriors on my PSP in a caravan. But what, at the same time, like, it would be cool to check out that, you know, imagine going that one night to that sort of town and see what was going on and stuff and being part of that fictional sort of, that's how much it lives in my soul. You know what I mean? Like, I'd love to just check out that, you know, and see how it goes down in real life. I could just go to Hollywood. Yeah, cool. Right. Well, thank you very much, guys, for listening, and we will speak to you again very soon.
Cheers.